I'm going to introduce my colleague Kai. Kai Lee is an accessibility and usability consultant in the area of digital access. He works with a variety of organizations such as NELS, Microsoft, and Google to make sure that their products and services provide an outstanding experience for everyone that goes beyond compliance. He is a huge advocate for universal accessibility, especially in the areas of science, technology, engineering, and math. Occasionally, Kai teaches assistive technology to blind and visually impaired folks online and in person. Outside of work, he enjoys practicing, I'm going to say this wrong, Krav Maga. Krav Maga. I knew I'd say it wrong. I knew it.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. So today I want to talk a little bit more about accessibility, primarily focusing on the user experience. So I want you all to imagine, just for a sec, that it is your birthday and you've decided to invite a few friends over. One of them knows that you absolutely love cooking, and that because of that, you know that they definitely need a cookbook that will make really delicious recipes. So when they go get the book for you and you unwrap it, you see a blank book cover. When you open the book, the first page is blank, the next page is blank, and the entire book seems to have all blank pages. At this point, you might be pretty frustrated, but maybe you're the more determined type, and you think to yourself, maybe this book is written in invisible ink, so I'm gonna go and get a tool that might access the text. When you do, though, and it's slow going, you see that the text is really crappy font, very tiny. There are no page numbers, no table of contents, no headings. Everything is single line spacing. So, not very accessible. But that's the reality that we live in as blind and visually impaired people when we decide to purchase ebooks. And so to put that into greater perspective, we were asked to rank the most problematic issues during our Epub testing for the last couple of months to the least problematic, and we've encountered a few issues. I'm going to leave you guys to think about what those issues are and what's number one. And in the meantime, just share with you a short video to kind of explain some of this a little further. So please play the video.
Today, we're reading an accessible EPUB. We pull up the navigation pane, select a chapter, and press play.
Chapter 3. Before English. Our study of the history of the English language begins well before there is any English language to speak of.
To skip this section, we just press next.
Chapter 4. Introduction to Phonetics and the International Phonetic Alphabet.
The book is well laid out with excellent chapter navigation. Now, let's try a book that's more challenging to read. The navigation pane is empty. Play reads one word at a time.
Introduction. Capital T. E. Cattle. Industry. In.
And next only skips by 15 seconds.
Ranch. Hands.
This book has been produced in fixed layout and has no chapter navigation. Accessible publishing only requires small changes, but it makes a big difference.
So I think during our discussion this morning, we talked about how bad fixed layout is. And so not surprising, it's the number one issue that all of us identified as being the most problematic. And so number 2 would be no alt text. 3 would be no headings. And 4th would be missing links in the table of contents to access different sections of the book. And so my point is that a lot of these issues can easily be fixed, but unfortunately these issues are coming up time and time again. And so to go back to our analogy of that inaccessible cookbook, I want to also tell you that in my own experience, when I've accessed ebooks, people have sent PDF documents where all the pages are just images of text. And so, because screen readers only read text in, as actual text, then when they come across an image, it's not going to say anything. So that's no good. And of course, being determined and sometimes having to access very important information, we have to use optical character recognition, or OCR, to gain access. But once you do, then, well, you have no semantic markup. So it's more difficult to navigate by headings or chapters. And of course, even though OCR is steadily improving, there are also errors. And if you are interested in any sort of science and need to do math, OCR does support scanning in mathematical expressions, but that's not always very accurate, and that can really mess up your results. So I want to now talk about why accessibility is so important beyond what we talked about this morning. And to share a little bit about that, I want to give you some numbers. In Canada alone, there are over 800,000 people who are blind or visually impaired, and that number jumps to over 3 million who have a print disability. If we factor in everyone with any sort of disability, and Statistics Canada has done that, we see that the number now jumps to 6.2 million, which is 1 in every 5 persons in Canada who potentially have one or more disabilities. And that's not including all the people who are not disabled at the moment but could gain that. And so this is a really big number, and if you don't tailor your content to be accessible, you're really missing out. Now, the other thing, too, that I want to mention is that there's a lot of misconceptions that accessibility is expensive and difficult. As many people have pointed out this morning, there are a lot of good uses for accessibility beyond just providing materials for print-disabled readers. And the way to do this is to incorporate it from the get-go. If you do this, then that means all the accessibility will be there as you continue to build, and you won't have to go back and remediate all those issues. And finally, what can we do to make ebooks and generally all your products accessible? Well, there are a few things that you can do that will make a big difference. First is making sure that accessibility is a priority. If you make accessibility a priority from the top down, then there will be policy changes that support inclusivity. Second is to make sure that all your employees know about accessibility and how to apply it to the workflow. That means for coders, knowing how to add alt text, how to make good use of headings, etc. And finally, I think the most important thing is being able to hire people with disabilities at all stages of your content creation and generally throughout your entire product development lifecycle. This allows immediate feedback for accessibility. And so when you do this, you know right away whether you're missing certain crucial accessibility features that will make a big difference. And for example, I know that when I've sent emails to companies who've heard a little bit about accessibility and don't know anything about it, they'll say, well, we don't really know how to do this, and they'll just kind of blow us off. But the companies who really do, they'll like, yeah, we definitely can do this. It's easy. And as a result, a lot more customers are able to purchase your products. But also, I think it's important to hire people with disabilities in other roles besides accessibility testing, because not all of us are into accessibility. We might be because we're forced to, but we also have other talents. So I want to now share a recent study that was released by the end of last year, where they have found that companies who have supported and hired disabled employees have achieved an average of 28% higher revenue, 30% greater economic profit margins, and twice the net income of their industry peers. And I think the reason that they found this was because people with disabilities are very loyal. It's hard to switch jobs, and I think a lot of us have a passion for accessibility or whatever jobs we go and interview for. But the other thing too is that we are really good problem solvers, and as a result, we can innovate. But also the same study has found that people with disabilities outperform their non-disabled counterparts. And so you can also argue that because of the alternative techniques that we use that may be better than what is currently out there, we're able to increase productivity. So my point is that if we want to reap the benefits of accessibility, then we have to make it a priority and make it everyone's responsibility. So I invite any questions that you have, and also the accessibility testers at the back will be happy to answer anything as well. Yep.
Hi. I had a quick question about accessible PDFs.
Yes.
I know that we, like my company in particular, we have a third-party vendor who who makes our PDFs accessible. And I was wondering, are there certain, this is maybe too specific, maybe for JAWS, I was thinking about JAWS, and are there do you always use the same shortcut keys on JAWS to navigate an accessible PDF, or can it be a real crapshoot for trying to figure out how to jump through and parse content?
If in your PDF it's all tagged properly, then we're able to navigate by headings and links, and it's all the same keystrokes. But to get to the point to maybe open the document and all that, because I mean, whether you're using Mac or Windows, you have a million different ways of doing something, and so the processes and everybody's way of accessing things are going to be very different.
Okay, and because PDF has a design element to it, at least for a sighted user, how would somebody using, say, JAWS figure out that there is a boxed feature or something on that page that has additional information in it?
So that's a little tricky because PDFs honestly isn't the best format for accessibility. You have to do a lot of work in order to make it accessible. But right now, that content is a little tricky to access in that format.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
I was really wondering about that.
45 seconds left. Hi, Kai. We talked a bit yesterday about what your preferred platforms for using screen readers for Epubs are, so I thought that would be really helpful for everyone in the room to know what screen readers or platforms you prefer to have Epubs read to you.
So for me personally, I find that Windows is a better platform for accessing content and even just for general accessibility with the way that they've implemented it. But also for specifically ebooks, I actually like to read a lot of books on my phone, either through the Kindle app or getting a DRM free book and importing that into another app that has a better interface. So for me, I like using Voice Dream Reader, but there's a dozen other apps out there that also support Epubs, daisies, Word documents, and all sorts of other formats.
I have a quick question too. What is exactly the use of the page numbers in Epub for the screen readers and so on?
The page numbers are really helpful if you want to reference content, especially for me as a university student. You know, you have to cite things, and when those numbers don't match up to the print copy, it's kind of hard to do that.